welcome to a new edition of the Reigns on the Cardinals podcast. Rob Reigns, Mike Reigns here with you on a beautiful afternoon in Florida. We are not yet in Jupiter, though. On our way down to Jupiter, we'll be there in a matter of days. But we stopped off for a few days in St. Petersburg to kind of do a little reminiscing about where the Cardinals used to train and we used to hang out here. So we're in our condo that we used to stay in about 35 years ago or so, and had lunch today with a couple of former Cardinal players, and we'll get to more into that here a little bit later on in this podcast. But Mike, how are you doing?
Well, I wish I was down in Florida instead of watching the snow out the window here. So that's
sorry, I didn't want to brag it in too bad.
30 degrees we get here. But as we look forward here, we have going into this, today and going into the start of spring training camp, there were 3 teams that had not signed a free agent. And as we sit here at 5 o'clock on Wednesday, that list is down to 1.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yours truly, the Cardinals. The only team to not sign a free agent all offseason. Not one. Not a bullpen guy, not just random minor leaguer, nobody.
Of course, the last other team other than the Cardinals was their kind of their partners in the stadium rental at Roger Dean Chevrolet Stadium, the Marlins, but they signed Cal Quantrill to a 1-year contract on Wednesday. So they now bit the bullet and spent some money.
And the Brewers were the other team, and they just did it today too. So it's, when you look at this National League Central Division, there's still opportunities to be had out there if the right pieces come together.
Yeah, definitely. Well, the Cardinals, of course, the first official workout today in Jupiter for pitchers and catchers on the field, and that was always nice, always a good start of the spring when you see real people out there throwing off bullpen mounds and things like that. But unfortunately, the news of the day still is the same topic that we've been talking about since the end of last season, the future of Nolan Arenado. John Mozeliak, the president of baseball operations, I know that going into his last spring training, working in that capacity, that was the last thing he wanted to have to spend time talking about today, but he did, because it's the only thing that everybody's talking about.
Well, it really changes a lot of things, right? Because is this reset able to happen if he's here? And it does to some extent, yes, but not to the level of getting as many young kids up here that you want to get up here, right? You've got Nolan Gorman and Jordan Walker, who both were drafted as third basemen, and could one of them shift back to third base to allow some other spots for some of these other guys like Alec Burleson and Brendan Donovan and Thomas J.C. to make room for? But it all hinges on whether or not Nolan Arenado is here.
But when Mozeliak was speaking with the reporters today in Jupiter, he basically said the same thing he said in December. He said the same thing he said in January. He said the same thing he said, now is saying it in February. And I know that's the last thing he wanted to be talking about was, yes, we are still trying to trade Nolan Arenado. Do we know whether we're going to be able to get it done? No. Could it happen? Yes. If Nolan Arenado was not traded before Monday, the first official workout for the full squad, Nolan Arenado was expected to be in camp on Monday to work out with the rest of the Cardinals. And I don't know. I hope I'm wrong, but I just really think that could be an awkward situation.
It is for sure. And, the question is between Mo and Ollie and Arenado is, what is the thought going through Arenado's head right now? Like, does he feel like this team's just trying to get rid of him? Or is he going to come out and still compete and play for the team, even though they've said they're trying to trade him?
I think his best interest is to play well because, again, like we've talked about before, even if he's not traded at spring training, there are other teams are still watching you. They're going scouts at all of these games. And if somebody gets hurt on another club that maybe he, didn't originally have on his list of teams that he would want to go to, maybe there's a chance you could get something done in spring training. If not, maybe you get something done in before the trading deadline in July. I mean, to me, it's just he's a professional. He's paid very well to be a professional baseball player. Okay, maybe this isn't the situation that he really wanted it to be, but it's the situation that he finds himself in. And for him to be, he's got to buck up basically and get through it and just play hard, be a good role model for his younger teammates, encourage them, be supportive. Don't be a malcontent. I mean, that, to me, is what it comes down to, and we'll see if he can do that.
And the challenge really is, there are teams out there that probably want Arenado, but he doesn't want to go there. And having the no trade clause makes Mo's job very difficult because he's really only got about 4, maybe 5 teams that he wants to go to. And of those 4 or 5, either they don't want him or they don't want to eat as much money as the Cardinals are willing and wanting them to eat. So the question's got to be, where does some of that give and take, right? Do the Cardinals just try to dump him for something? Or The other question that I'd be curious to find out from Mo at some point, and hopefully somebody can ask the question, is when does the deadline kind of come to stop trying to trade him? Because once you hit a certain point, he's on your team, he's playing, and he's a part of the things as they go forward. Does that stop until June?
I think there has to be some kind of a point of no return. Maybe it's opening day. Maybe it's a week into spring training. I don't know. I mean, I guess it probably depends on two things. It probably depends on what Alex Bregman's situation is, as we've talked about all along. He still yet has not made up a commitment on where he's going to go. But it sounds like the only one of the teams that is involved with Bregman that also is involved in talking to the Cardinals, who is on supposedly on Arenado's list of teams that he would agree to go to, is Boston. So to me, if I'm the Boston Red Sox, I want to get this resolved too. And if I would get tired of waiting on Bregman and just pull the plunge on Arenado if that's what you really want to do. If that's your plan B, and you're happy with the terms of the contract, happy with whatever the Cardinals are saying they're going to pay financially, you're happy with whatever the Cardinals are asking for in prospect return. So it's kind of there's multiple players involved here. The Cardinals, Arenado, his agent, the other teams. There has to be some give and take with all these guys if something's going to happen.
And the other question too is, if the Red Sox were happy with the deal that the Cardinals offered, why sit here and wait for Bregman if they're okay with Arenado? That just doesn't make sense to me. Now, maybe they're not happy with the offer and they keep thinking that if we can get Bregman first, that would be the ultimate plan A. So let's not worry about B.
I think there's two things at play. Number one is if they get Bregman, who Alex Cora knows from his time in Houston, the plan is that they would play him at second base. At least that's what I've seen publicly written in Boston. They don't have to move Rafael Devers then off at third. If they do sign, or trade for Arenado, then Devers has to go to either play first base, which bumps Tristan Casas, or has to become more of a DH. So there is, Bregman is a more perfect fit for them in their lineup than Arenado would be. But he also going to cost them a lot more money and more years. So that could be it too. And it could also be the other factor is whatever the Cardinals are offering to pay, the percentage of their $64 million that they have left owed to him over the next 3 years is not to as much as the Red Sox want. Maybe the Red Sox want them to kick in more money, which means the Cardinals are then asking for a better prospect in return. So that could be where the whole thing, kind of falls apart too.
And if I'm Arenado, I'm looking at this saying, okay, well, if the team I really want to go to, i.e. the Dodgers, doesn't want me, then, I'm coming into spring training with a chip on my shoulder and thinking I'm going to play as well as I possibly can so that the Dodgers do step up and say, hey, we need this bat in our lineup. We need him, and make that, trade possibility a little bit easier for the Cardinals.
And of course, the other possibility or situation that we don't know the answer to, and we won't know the answer to until we see how Arenado's playing in spring training, and probably not even really until you get into the regular season, is what was the biggest reasons why he struggled so much a year ago, and can he bounce back from that, or was this the start of a trend that's only going to continue to to go downhill instead of being able to reverse it and go the other way?
And in my opinion, I really think a lot of this was on the approach that the former Cardinals hitting coach had throughout all of this. So that's why I'm very curious to see the approach with Brant Brown and how he, approaches some of these guys like Arenado, because Arenado was very close to Turner Ward and wanted him there for a while, but it never seemed to result in anything. Not in a positive way.
Don't you think too, though, that a hitter like Arenado, with all the years of experience that he has and all the hits and success that he's had, he should know himself as a hitter better than anybody else. I don't think he's the kind of guy that really should be relying on a hitting coach telling him what to do.
I would agree, but I would also argue this fact. I think that Turner Ward and the hitting approach before, and I'm drawing a blank on the guy before Turner Ward,
Jeff
Albert, and the whole philosophy that Jeff Albert pitched was launch angle and velocity. All they worried about was hitting home runs. And, you heard Colton Wong, I remember specifically said it when he got to Milwaukee. He said, I'm having more success because I'm just doing what I know how to do, and I'm not being told to hit a way that I'm not used to hitting. And so I'm very curious to see, was that happening to Arenado? Were they trying to give him a new way to hit, just focused on home runs, instead of just letting him go out there and hit doubles like he can do?
Earlier this week, I wrote a column for STLSportsPage.com on the 10 biggest questions facing the Cardinals in the spring, or the questions they would have to answer. And I said you could make a case that arguably the most important person in a Cardinal uniform this spring is going to be Brant Brown, and the work that he has to do not only with the veterans, but particularly with Gorman and Walker and some of the other young guys that Cardinals are really counting on to take that next step this year.
I would absolutely agree with that because I've not been a fan of the Cardinals' hitting approach and their lack of offense for the past few years here, right? I mean, you can look at how many postseason games we've got in, and then all of a sudden we forget how to hit, and like they're just abysmal, right? And a lot of that is the approach. And so I'm curious when you look at some of these older guys, yes, they should know how to do it without a hitting coach, but is he trying to force the system on them that doesn't work? And is Brant Brown going to come in here and force the system, try to force something on them? Or is he going to say, hey, this is your strength, let's capitalize on that. Hey, this is your strength, let's capitalize on that. And I think two of the biggest question marks as we go through watching Brant Brown is what does he do and how is he able to work with Jordan Walker and Nolan Gorman?
I would agree with that. This edition, of course, of Raising the Cardinals podcast brought to you by our good friends at AAA Travel of Missouri. Underwriting all of our spring training coverage here on STLSportsPage.com, as well as Archwell Health. And, of course, our presenting sponsor for the entire website, Drury Hotels. We thank them very much for all of their support and helping us be able to bring you this show, as well as all of our other full coverage of spring training once we get down to Jupiter here in a couple of days. Of course, the first full squad workout on Monday the 17th. Exhibition games start on Saturday the 22nd. If you are going down to Jupiter, it's still in your plans to get down there. A couple of things you should know. The backfields are going to be open for practices as of next week, but they already have started some construction at the back there, and so you cannot park in that back parking lot where you've been used to parking in the past. You're going to have to walk in through that gate or walk in through the other gate over there off University Avenue. And we're not only positive about how that first week is going to go. They're going to reassess it after that point and make sure that the letting fans in and stuff is not really interfering with the construction that's going to be going on out there. Of course, the other big change you're going to see at the stadium is the bullpens have been moved behind the outfield fences, but the fences have been brought in. So there may or may not be a few more home runs hit in spring training this year. Roger Dean always is a notorious tough park for hitters in spring training, as well as in the Florida State League when the minor leaguers take over the field. So it'll be interesting to see what effect moving those fences in has on the power game in spring training and then for the minor leaguers during the regular season.
That's something that's probably needed to happen for a while because the lack of home runs there, I don't know if it's just the wind flow or what it is, but that's always been a really hard park to hit in. And especially, trying to judge talent in the, Florida Gulf Coast League there, right? How do you tell how well somebody hit it if it stays in the park?
Of course, it was all part of the bigger plan of renovations. Most of that work will start after spring training is over as they redo the clubhouses and the weight rooms and training rooms and all that kind of stuff, kind of trying to modernize the stadium. Kind of hard to believe. And as we talked about being here in St. Petersburg, 27 years ago that the Cardinals moved from St. Petersburg to train in Jupiter in 1998, their first year in Jupiter. It doesn't seem like it should have been that long ago, but it was. But of course, all the times that the Cardinals were training over here in the 80s and 90s, and all the fans made the trek down here from St. Louis, I think fell in love with St. Petersburg, and that's probably why a lot of people from St. Louis actually have retired and moved down here. And I know that includes a number of former Cardinals from those teams in the 1980s. We drove by Al Lang Field today. It's now a soccer stadium, and people will be disappointed to know that the main two are green and yellow. It looked a little bit different, but that view, sitting at that ballpark, looking out over Tampa Bay, is still one of the prettiest sights of all spring training.
It's crazy to think about how long they've been there, right? That just means two things. It means one, you're getting old, and
well, yeah, that's true.
And two, it's crazy to think about how much Jupiter has blown up since we've been there, right? I remember the first year they moved out there, and you're looking at it thinking, this is just a big empty field. What are we doing?
Yeah.
Like, why? There's nothing around this. And now you show up and there's shops and restaurants and everything within miles of walking, throughout Abacoa.
And St. Petersburg has changed a lot too over the years. We really haven't spent any time here in the last several years, except maybe a weekend here or there when a series was going on. But downtown was very vibrant. A lot of bars, a lot of shops, a lot of restaurants. The area around the stadium is booming. So it's by the pier. They had a couple of hurricanes that did a lot of damage out on the beaches last summer, but they're bouncing back. We were out on Johns Pass. They've dolphin tours going on again and stuff. So I think the area has really come back for that. So look for a story kind of with some of our memories coming up here soon on STL Sports Page. We took a lot of pictures that we'll have up on a story later on this spring. Do want to mention a couple other things while we are here. There was some real Cardinal news today off the field involving the arbitration hearings, the results for Lars Nootbaar and Brendan Donovan. The Cardinals have won the hearing against Donovan. They lost the hearing against Nootbaar. Both of those guys basically had filed a number that was about $500,000 apart from what the Cardinals had offered. So Cardinals, kind of came out about even on that deal. Andre Palante's hearing was on Wednesday, so we'll know the results of his hearing here in a couple of days. But I still don't understand. I was going to make one more comment, Mike, before we go to you. Still don't understand. I know they said as soon as they didn't reach an agreement before the arbitration deadline to file for arbitration, but I still don't understand. To me, when you're dealing with a payroll, even if the Cardinals have a reduced payroll this year, it's still going to be $150 million. And if you're $500,000 apart on two key guys that you really are counting on this year, I just don't understand why they couldn't try to find some way to settle in the middle and avoid that arbitration hearing. I know Nootbaar and Donovan are both very level-headed guys. They're both grown-ups. They're not going to take anything personal that was said during the arbitration hearing, but it's still a very uncomfortable process. And I just think they could have found a way to get around that.
I was just going to say we need to find a way to come up with a better process than this arbitration hearing, the way that it's set up throughout all of baseball, because it's not good for the team. It's not good for the player. And Helsley came out of it last year and was like, I'm not doing that again. This is not fun. So I can't imagine that Nootbaar or Donovan really particularly liked it either. And we'll see what Palante says too. But I just wish somehow in Major League Baseball we'd come up with a better way than how it's done right now.
I do think Tyler O'Neill had a really bad experience a couple of years ago too, when he was involved in that hearing process. So we'll see. Hopefully that won't be a negative as we go forward. As I mentioned, the Cardinals did have their first official workout today. And the other position I think maybe we haven't paid enough attention to, as far as you're talking about young hitters and the work with Brant Brown, is the Cardinals are making a big commitment to go with two young catchers this year in Ivan Herrera and Pedro Paez by moving Contreras to first base. And that's going to be interesting too, to see how those two guys perform given that responsibility.
And if you, although it was a small sample size, but if you look at the offensive numbers that Ivan Herrera put up, having both Herrera and Contreras in the lineup at the same time could be really beneficial too. So I'm curious to see how that works out. But the bigger question mark to me is the starting rotation, because we already know what is projected to be the starting rotation based on who did it last year, who was there. But if we're going to do this reset, you got to let the kids have their innings. You got to let them pitch. You got to let them play. So at that point, how do these young guys work with Herrera and Pages? They've been working with them for a while in the minors. So how does that translate coming up here? But is Palante, Michaelis, and Matz your 3, 4, 5? It probably is right now. But where is Quinn Matthews? Where's Tink Hens? Where's Gordon Graceffo? Like, if we want to do a reset, we got to do it across the board, not just on the position side.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And I think that was one of the things the Cardinals kind of maybe missed the boat on this winter, was trying to make up some openings for some of those guys. I think is a way that maybe you could get Graceffo a spot in the bullpen. McGreevy, I think, will be on the roster. It's just a matter of whether they can find him a spot in the bullpen, if he's going to take one of the starter spots, if he's going to actually be part of a six-man rotation, which is something that manager Alva Marmol was talking about on Wednesday with his session with the media on the first day of spring training. So I think a lot of those questions still to be resolved. If you are coming down to the spring training, we do want to remind you again about our party, which we have every year. It's going to be on March 11th this year at the Homewood Suites, right there on Roger Dean, right there on Donald Ross Boulevard. It's about a mile or so from the stadium. Usually have a couple of special guests there. Those are still to be determined, but always a great time. You can find all the information on our spring training page down at the on the website, stlsportspace.com. All the details, discounted rate available as well to the Homewood Suites. Those rooms are selling out fast, but still time to do that if you'd like to come down and join us. Or even if you can't come down that particular weekend, it's always still a great time to come down and to soak up the sun. The weather's been great. It's supposed to be great here for the next several days.
Yeah, it should be nice. It's always a great time down there. And again, all these questions that we're asking, we're going to get to see them play out through spring training, right? I mean, you're going to get to see who's getting more time, who's getting where. And so that's half the fun of getting down there and just seeing how these guys work out and who comes in ready to play.
Yeah, and I just really think we get to Monday with that first workout. If Nolan Arenado has not been traded to that point, which, could happen, as we speak. It could not happen. We just have to wait and see it. Then that's going to be the interesting comment. He's not commented publicly at all since the end of last season, as far as I'm aware of any his thoughts on the whole thing. Of course, we know what happened when he blocked the trade to the Astros in December. That's kind of the only action that he's had. So how he comes into camp and the effect it has on the other players, that's to me going to be the main storyline to watch this spring.
And he has gotten close with a lot of the younger guys, right? I know that him and Lars Nootbaar are close, and him and Pedro Paez are close. So how does that relationship affect some of those guys? Or, what's his attitude like in the clubhouse? Does he want to be there? Does he not want to be there? Is he coming in and playing hard knowing that he needs to play hard to get traded? Or is he just coming in and going through the motions because he doesn't care? That's what I'm curious about.
I would agree with you. It'll be interesting to watch. Of course, we'll be there on hand to watch that starting on Monday, as well as then all the other daily spring training coverage on stlsportspage.com. We're back with our Jupiter Minute again this year, as well as the postcard from camp with all the game reports start on the 22nd. Mike will be joining us in person down there for a couple of podcasts as well. So looking forward to that as we get closer into spring training. So, Mike, thanks for the visit. We'll talk to you again real soon.
Can't wait.
Thanks for everybody for joining us here on this edition of Reigns on the Cardinals podcast on stlsportspage.com.